Tim's News Explosion. 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 Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Tim's News Explosion. It is Monday, the 28th of September, 2021. We are live, as always, on the Wilmsfront YouTube and DLive channels, as well as on the interactive Entropy software, which I've just put through in the live chat, where you can ask a direct question of myself and, or better yet, send through a super chat. It is 9 p.m. here in lockdown Melbourne, Victoria. Well, it's just past curfew as well, because we're the only remaining Australian city to be under a curfew as part of our lockdown. And after a week of rage on the streets of Melbourne, it seems that Victoria Police once again appear to have crushed this latest round of protests, which obviously began with construction workers outside the CFMEU Melbourne headquarters on Monday morning, protesting their union leader, John Setka, for not pushing back against the vaccine mandate. After the police riot squad were called in, the Andrews government responded by shutting down the construction industry for 2 weeks. And, well, a week into that construction ban, there is no word on whether it will reopen by next week. The mainstream media labelled the week of protests. Obviously, Tuesday was the largest protest where construction workers and tradies walked over the Westgate Bridge all the way from the CBD to the Westgate Bridge. On Wednesday, it was a smaller crowd, which were cornered at the Shrine of Remembrance and were dispersed by Victoria Police, shooting them with beanbag rounds and rubber bullets. Then the protests, they receded in size on Thursday and Friday. Now the mainstream media, they labelled these protests as riots, except that there wasn't any burning of buildings. There was no property damage. There was no looting, no breaking into the stores and stealing stuff, and there was also no murders or deaths. So there was no burning, looting, or murder BLM in these protests at all. And now on Saturday morning, Victoria Police, they managed to sideline another big anti-lockdown activist, Harrison McLean, who runs the Melbourne Freedom Rally accounts. And so here's the XYZ article here. And so it has here, he was charged with the standard Victoria Police charge against anti-lockdown activists at the moment, incitement. David Hiscock here goes through some of the, or what I would call, pathetic hit pieces on Harrison. So they mentioned that he was a Monash University graduate, a former cheerleader. And what is that? They accuse him of mobilizing the riots that turned the city into a battleground. That's what the Daily Mail said. And so, this was one of the mainstream media, the chief architect of Melbourne's week of destructive anti-vaccine process, had been charged with incitement, which he wasn't the chief architect. That's fake news, because, well, as has already been, as the true facts when they're laid out, it was an organic protest of construction workers and tradies against mandatory vaccinations. And goes further down. Go further down here. So it talks about here that Harrison McLean has opened up a GoFundMe account, which is on Harrison McLean's. There's a link to it on his website, harrisonmclean.com there. And so he's using at the moment fundly.com. And so he was granted bail immediately, which Victoria Police didn't try what they did on Monica Schmidt by putting these really restrictive bail conditions on her, which she initially rejected. That's why she was in custody for most of September, which were overturned by the Supreme Court of Victoria. Seemed that Victoria Police didn't want to go through that process again, so he was bailed immediately, Harrison McLean, and the only real bail condition that he got was to not incite people to breach the Chief Health Officer's directions there. I noticed that they mocked his Fundly yesterday because it only had 6 donors. It now has 30 donors. It's raised $5,737 as at present. His next court hearing is in April 2022, so quite a while away there. Now, while this was all going on in Victoria this past week, Scott Morrison was over in the United States. He's just touched down back in the country now to meet, well, as part of the Quad Leaders Summit. The Quad is this new, basically, anti-communist China alliance with Australia, the United States, India, and Japan. There was one of the 4 of the biggest democracies in the world, and Scott Morrison also spoke at the United Nations in New York, and a comedian called Deactivist did this mashup of his speech to the United Nations about how great Australian democracy, liberty, and freedom and human rights is.
We are a proud liberal democracy. We believe in a world order that favours freedom and that supports the dignity and free expression of all people. We believe in human rights, in gender equality and the rule of law, and we back that up with how we pursue these things in our own country, in our own society, and how we raise our own children. Australia was one of 8 countries only involved in the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and we continue to strengthen the international human rights system. And we will continue to raise our voice on important issues like the rights of women and girls, the rights of Indigenous peoples, because respecting the rights and freedoms of the individual is intrinsically important. It is fundamental to our values as a people and as a nation. It lifts all societies and nations too, delivering better outcomes through economic inclusion.
So if you get vaccinated, there will be special rules that apply to you.
Women's empowerment, environmental sustainability, rising living standards, and so much more. Australians' actions are guided by our belief in the inherent dignity of all people, everywhere, no matter the circumstances. Mr. President, we learned through the pandemic that every moment of challenge requires us to think anew, to engage with each other, to learn as you go. It is an experience understood by many others. And so we will continue to meet this moment with dialogue. Thank you, Mr. President.
The actions of Victoria Police again went viral all around the world. Australia's international reputation continues to disintegrate, and given that, well, we're part of this Quad leaders to rein in communist China because of their military aggression, their human rights abuses, we're quickly losing the moral high ground when it comes to criticizing the actions of communist China. I follow Drew Pavlo, the anti-CCP activist in Queensland, and he often, lately has been posting a lot of the footage from Victoria and New South Wales of police brutality and saying, no, this is not from Hong Kong or China. This is actually from Australia. And believe it or not, on Wednesday, it is actually Blue Ribbon Day, which is the Blue Ribbon Foundation to support police officers who've, and their families who've fallen in the line of duty. But as was the case with last year, I don't think that they're going to get as many donations as they have in previous years. And I notice that again, and this got a lot of attention last year, that one of the major partners of Blue Ribbon Day is Freemasons Foundation Victoria, and also the Crown Resorts Foundation. And given that, well, the amount of organised crime and money laundering that we have seen taken place at Crown Casino in Melbourne recently, I think that Victoria Police, rather than partnering with the Crown Resorts Foundation, should, instead of terrorizing the citizenry, should maybe do a bit more investigating on sort of what's going on at the Crown Resort in Melbourne. And also later in the year, it's the Elimination of Violence Against Women Day, a noble cause, of course. But of course, the irony of Victoria Police launching a video campaign against it.
The 25th of November is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women and signals the start of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence.
Anyone can be a victim of abuse. However, the overwhelming majority of family violence and sexual offences are perpetrated by men against women and children. And this has been a year that has impacted those in vulnerable situations more than ever. Across the community, many people from all cultures don't feel safe and respected within their family or relationship. This is simply unacceptable.
Police are at the front line of this community crisis, protecting the many brave women and children that come forward, seeking our help and holding perpetrators to account. Victoria Police plays a leadership role in this. Like all good practice, it begins by looking at ourselves. This means ensuring our workforce understands and upholds the values and behaviours that create a safe, inclusive and gender equal workplace.
Victoria Police commit to working hand in hand with the community to end violence against women and children and making the community and our organisation a safer place.
Yes, the self-awareness of both Victoria Police and their new cheerleaders, the Twitter blue drop progressive dance stands, they've completely lost all sense of self-awareness. I mean, the people who were taking part in the BLM protests last June in Melbourne, claiming that Victoria Police were brutes before all of this brutal lockdown enforcement happened, and now they're police's biggest cheerleaders, and they can't get enough of the police brutality against COVIDiots, and of course continuing to push that conspiracy theory that the Victoria Police, they didn't pepper spray an elderly lady. It was apparently a 34-year-old man in a wig, even though it's been consistently debunked, this new conspiracy theory, as was the conspiracy theory that the construction and tradie protests last week were organised by neo-Nazi far-right extreme anti-vaxxers, and hence why the mainstream media tried to, when Harrison McLean was arrested and charged, they tried to claim, alleged that he was responsible for it all. Again, fake news. And I noticed that there was a few people on Twitter, Dan Stans, who's saying that they hope Rukshan Fernando and Avi Yemeni are the next one charged with incitement, because them covering, in their view, them covering the protests as independent journalists, because they're showing the protesters in a good light, and the protesters like them, that's inciting more protests. Well, I guess they would also agree that the reason that, Victoria Police tried to, remember last week, they tried to prevent the mainstream media showing aerial live footage because apparently it gave the protesters a head start on police tactics. There's been a lot of people accusing should I say, progressive Dan Stans, who've been accusing the mainstream media of incitement. The hashtag Murdoch riots is also trending there. So any person any media outlet who doesn't call the rioters far right extreme neo-Nazi thugs, rioters, whatever, then according to the Blue Drops, then they're inciting or enabling the protest. That's their logic there. They have no argument or claim that they believe in human rights at all. They've pretty much adopted the position now that human rights are selfish and are for privileged people. But let's now go north to New South Wales, where today Premier Gladys Berejiklian and Deputy John Barilaro released the next 2 phases of the state's roadmap to reopening. They had only revealed the first phase of their reopening plan approximately 3 weeks ago, which said that at 70% double dosed, freedoms would only be granted for the fully vaccinated. And Gladys Berejiklian had already discussed that they were going to, hinted that there were discussions ongoing with the hospitality industry of integrating vaccine certificates into their Service New South Wales QR check-in. That's what the Customer Service Minister of New South Wales, Victor Dominello, aka Eye Patch Man, was working on. But as has been the case with many vaccine passport proposals, most notably in the United Kingdom, it has now been revealed today to be simply a bluff to get more people vaccinated. Because, of course, it's one thing to threaten it, but it's a whole lot of other thing to implement it, and all the shit that it's likely to unleash. So the third and currently final phase of the New South Wales reopening, which takes effect from December 1, which it states that the following settings will apply to all New South Wales citizens, regardless of their vaccination status. No limit on the number of visitors to a home. That was one of the most egregious restrictions or bans, in my view, that the government could control who comes into your home. It's that's still the case here in New South Wales, Victoria. It's $5,000 fine for illegal home gatherings at present. Certainly, the past year and a half, a man's home hasn't been his castle. So most venues will have the 1 person per 2 square meter rule, and there'll be no limits on informal outdoor gatherings. So I assume that large protests are permitted again. And then we have masks. They'll only be required by then on public transport, planes and airports. But this is weird. Front of house hospitality workers. So I guess that you could call that rule the Met Gala, Emmy Awards, peasant servant rule. That while everyone, all the clients enjoying the hospitality, all the servants bringing them drinks and food and whatever have to be masked up. I don't know why Gladys is sticking with that rule. It should just be a Freedom Day like the UK has had, but of course Gladys Berejiklian, she hasn't liked the term Freedom Day at all. She shied away from it today, though what she has promised by December 1 is as close to the UK Freedom Day. But despite basically Gladys and Barilaro admitting that, yeah, it was a bluff, they still claim that the unvaccinated are going to be shut out. This was Barilaro today.
The message to the unvaccinated is that you will not achieve any further freedom unless you get vaccinated. And a further and final message to regional New South Wales. There are parts of regional New South Wales that are currently open. The 70% roadmap does apply to the whole state. So there will be individuals in regional rural New South Wales who choose not to be vaccinated who will lose their freedoms on the 11th of October. So my message to everybody in regional and rural New South Wales is to continue to get vaccinated.
Now, Barilaro was referring to, because there's a lot of regional New South Wales areas out of lockdown, but says once the state reaches 70% double dose, then for the 2 months, because the state is going to reach 70% double dosed early October, that there's going to be 2 months where regional New South Welshmen have their rights taken away and then restored, which obviously still sucks, but it again proves, vindicates a lot of activists against vaccine passports who say, hold the line. There is no way that governments will be able to sustain medical apartheid and health discrimination. And also going back to the roadmap here, it also talks about how international travel is likely to be permitted by that time, which, as I've previously said, as soon as the border, it's not illegal for Australians to leave Australia. There's going to be a lot of one-way international flights with people not going back. But according to Anastasia Palaszczuk, the Queensland Premier, who's still a member of the COVID zero cult, she claims that why would you want to go anywhere else?
Well, where are you going to go? Are you going to go to India? In Tokyo, you have to sit in perspex screens with masks on, and if you remove your mask, you can't talk while you're eating. Yes, in Europe, some people are travelling. I think the federal government needs to identify very clearly what are the countries that Australians can travel to. Okay, and going through those airports, some of those airports are like ghost towns. We have to wear a P95 mask. I mean, Queenslanders would probably enjoy greater freedoms travelling around Queensland than if they hopped on a plane and went to Tokyo. I think the federal government needs to identify what are the countries that Australians can travel to.
How offensive to our new Quad partners, India and Japan, with Anastasia Palaszczuk saying, well, do you want to go there? Well, given that India, its Delta curve is now flat. Remember in late May that India, what is it? People dropping dead in the streets, and what is it? The morgues were full. The India Delta curve is now completely flat. It's not locked down, so you would have greater freedom in India. Some people also argue you'd have greater freedom also in Afghanistan as well. But yeah, Anastasia Palaszczuk is repeating the now mocked internationally line, oh, there's no place to better be in the pandemic than Australia, or the international community is laughing and also horrified is what is happening at Australia. And now I also forgot to mention, despite the New South Wales reopening plan, Mrs. New World Order, Dr Kerry Chant, said this last week.
Stress. We will not be ever having to go back to pre-COVID levels. We're always going to have to be mindful that COVID exists. We're going to have to engage with booster shots. We're going to have to engage with advice from time to time. When we see outbreaks, we're going to have to respond. So it's not going to go back to normal. We can't deny that we're going to have to live with COVID. But having those very high vaccination levels will allow us to have more minimal restrictions or more minimal public health measures in place as we navigate the future years with COVID.
Yes, she previously said they're trying to figure out what contact tracing looks like in the New World Order, because even though December 1, most restrictions come off in New South Wales, there'll still be QR check-ins and various form of contact tracing as well, which is a form of digital health surveillance. So it's certainly not Freedom Day like, well, Norway is going back to, well, the old normal, the 2019 normal. Norway joins its Scandinavian cousins in Sweden and Denmark by getting rid of all COVID restrictions and going back to the old normal. And what a night it was in Norway. This was one of the scenes at one of the nightclubs. Isn't that beautiful? I much prefer the old world order rather than the new world order that the globalists are trying to bring in. I want to build back to the previous times, not build back new, and have a reset to the old times, not a great reset as the World Economic Forum's one. I don't think I nailed all those puns I was trying to get, but you get the idea. Now, meanwhile, in Germany, they had their federal election on Sunday. Angela Merkel is stepping down as Chancellor after 16 years and 4 terms. She is from the Christian Democratic Party, which, don't be fooled, it's nothing. Her Christian Democratic Party is nothing like Fred Niles' Christian Democratic Party here. It's a very watered down conservative party in Germany, and her Christian Democrat, well, it's sometimes called party, sometimes called union. So it has lost. So the Social Democratic Party, the SPD, is now the largest party, because Germany uses a proportional representation system called MMP. It's the same one they have in New Zealand. So this is the preliminary results here. So the SPD will have 206, the CDU 196. The third largest party is the German Greens, because since Germany has largely moved on from the COVID pandemic, now climate change is the new moral challenge. And Greta Thunberg, she made an appearance at a climate teen rally, I think in Berlin a few days before the election. Greta has been in a free Sweden for the past year, so hasn't endured the COVID horrors that we have. But because it was a climate election, Greens are now the third biggest party, followed by in fourth is the classical liberal Free Democratic Party, and then the Alternative for Deutschland. They came in fifth. That's sort of like what do you call it, a soft nationalist Brexit-style party. And then with the party that did the worst, which was great, with only 39 seats, is the Left Party, which is the Communist Party. It was born out of the ashes, the Left Party of the Socialist Unity Party that brutally ruled East Germany during the communist era there, which means that the German Greens, they're actually, well, I wouldn't say moderate, but they're not full of open communists, because if you're a communist in Germany, you go over to the Left Party there. But I was talking about the UK before. You will have noticed that the UK has a fuel shortage at the moment. A lot of they haven't got enough truck drivers to drive from European countries like through Germany to deliver fuel there. So that is the new crisis in the UK. And over in the US, their supply chains are being disrupted because of the COVID restrictions and lockdowns in Southeast Asia, where a lot of parts for manufacturing are made. And in fact, even Costco, they've put quantity limits on toilet paper, not because of demand, but because of reduced supply. Who knew that stopping people from working and producing lots of the things that we've become accustomed to would lead to a shortage. And that's why businesses in Australia, retailers in Australia, I should say, saying order your Christmas shopping online now, because there's no guarantee it'll get there by Christmas at this rate here. All right, that's Tim's news explosion for tonight. I've kept it to almost half an hour, so I did pretty well. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Again, Wilmsfront will be back on Thursday evening, 8:30 p.m. Melbourne time on the Wilmsfront channels, and then Trad Tasman Talk, 6 p.m. Melbourne time on the Unshackled YouTube channel with Stephen Berry this week. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Good night. I'll see you Thursday, and then, of course, another Tim's News Explosion next Monday night. Good night, everybody. Tim's News Explosion. 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 Tim's News Explosion.